You can either stay where you are, comfortable but unfulfilled, or take the first brave step toward the unknown. Every journey, from boarding your first flight to starting a travel page, begins with a choice to move forward. Let's start with something painfully obvious but often ignored. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't pause just because you're unsure, anxious, or overwhelmed. It moves forward with or without your participation. That presents you with a stark, unavoidable reality. At any given moment, in the face of any challenge or opportunity, you are presented with only two choices: stay stuck or start moving. Staying stuck is deceptively seductive. It feels safe, familiar. Even if you're dissatisfied, maybe even miserable, there's a certain comfort in routine, in the known. It gives you the illusion of control, even if that control is just the avoidance of discomfort. But here's the problem. You're not just staying in one place. You're quietly falling behind. While you're standing still, the world is moving, evolving, progressing, and deep down, you know it. Think about it. Every time you hesitate to take that first step, whether it's sending a message, buying the ticket, or launching a project, you're engaging in a psychological negotiation with fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of judgment. But fear doesn't protect you, it imprisons you. It whispers convincing lies. Maybe later. What if it goes wrong? You're not ready yet. These are not protective instincts. These are mental chains, well-disguised mechanisms of self-sabotage. And yet, the alternative is terrifying too. Movement means risk. It means change. It means facing the possibility that things won't go as planned. But here's the paradox. Movement is the only thing that leads to meaning. Every meaningful transformation in your life has started with a decision to act before you had everything figured out. That wasn't an accident. That was growth-demanding motion. You had to go. You had to move forward. Even if you didn't feel ready, look back at your own life. The first time you decided to leave home, the first time you faced an airport terminal alone, heart pounding, unsure of what the future held. You didn't know how it would go, but you went anyway. You made the choice to move, and that changed everything. That one act shattered the illusion that you needed certainty to begin. You only needed courage, temporary courage, a crack in the fear, just long enough to take a step. The truth is, people often confuse clarity with certainty. They wait to be sure before they move, as if clarity is some mystical epiphany that descends only when the stars align. But clarity isn't a gift. It's the result of movement. You don't think your way into purpose. You walk your way into it. And often, you only find it after you've passed through discomfort, self-doubt, and a few humiliating failures. Psychologically, this isn't just motivational fluff. It's grounded in cognitive behavioral science. Human beings are wired for agency. The act of making a decision, of choosing forward momentum, activates a sense of ownership. That agency increases confidence and builds what psychologists call self-efficacy, the belief that you can handle what life throws at you. But none of that is triggered until you decide to move. So what happens if you don't? What happens if you keep waiting one more week, one more excuse, one more silent hope that something external will change? You don't just stay in the same place. You start to decay. Not physically, maybe not visibly, but existentially. Your sense of self begins to erode. Your potential rots in silence. That's the cost of inaction. And it's far higher than the cost of failure. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need total confidence. You need to interrupt the loop, break the inertia. Begin. That's it. Begin with the resources you have. Begin before you're ready. Begin because you must. Staying stuck isn't neutral. It's a decision. And every day you make it, you become more the person who chooses comfort over courage. So, here it is, your moment of choice. You can stay exactly where you are, safe and stagnant, or you can take the first step, however small, and start moving. You don't need to know the whole path. You just need to reject paralysis. Staying stuck is the slowest form of dying. Moving, even imperfectly, is how you come back to life. Fear holds us back. Faith pushes us ahead. When you chose to travel abroad or build a dream from scratch, you weren't fearless. You were faithful. You believed there was something more waiting on the other side of fear. fear or faith. It's a binary choice, and it defines the direction of your life more than almost anything else. Not in the religious sense, though that can play a role, but in the deep psychological sense. Faith in yourself, in the path you've chosen, in the belief that even though the future is uncertain, it is worth engaging with. And fear is what convinces you to retreat into safety, predictability, and numbness, even if that safety is slowly suffocating you. Fear, at its core, is an evolutionary response. It's ancient. It protected your ancestors from lions in the tall grass, from cliffs, from snakes, from starvation. It served a vital function in a dangerous world. But now, fear disguises itself in modern clothing. It shows up as anxiety before an interview. It whispers in your ear when you're about to post your first video, apply for a visa, or admit that you want more out of your life. It says things like, what if they laugh at you? Or what if you fail and everyone sees it? The lion in the grass has become social shame, judgment, the fear of being exposed as inadequate. And yet, what is faith? It's not blind optimism. It's not naivety. It's not denying danger. Faith is the courage to act despite fear. It's the deep psychological trust that growth is on the other side of discomfort, that the version of you who is capable, disciplined, respected, and fulfilled doesn't emerge before the leap. He emerges because of it. We live in a time where uncertainty is weaponized against us. The news cycle keeps us in a state of low-level panic. Social media feeds you curated perfection, so your own messy progress feels shameful by comparison. The cultural narrative increasingly teaches you to wait, to heal more, to prepare more, to be absolutely sure before you step out and take a risk. But here's the hard truth. There is no life without risk. There is no love, no art, no business, no purpose without the risk of loss, rejection, or failure. The absence of risk is the absence of aliveness. When you choose fear, you remain trapped in a psychological loop. It reinforces your anxiety. Each time you back away from the unknown, you teach your brain that the unknown is dangerous. That reinforces your fear, which leads to more avoidance. The result is paralysis. Your world becomes smaller. You speak less, try less, dream less. You shrink into yourself. And the worst part, you become convinced that you're protecting yourself, when in reality, you're slowly erasing who you could be. But when you choose faith, even once, you shatter that loop. You signal to your psyche that you are capable of more than survival, that you're willing to suffer voluntarily in the pursuit of meaning, that you'd rather face a brutal truth than live in comfortable delusion. That's not weakness, that's heroism. On a small daily scale, philosophically, this is echoed in countless traditions. In Stoicism, courage is a core virtue, facing what you cannot control and choosing to act anyway. In existentialism, meaning is not found, it's created through responsibility and choice. In psychology, the most transformative therapy involves confrontation, facing what you fear voluntarily until it no longer controls you. Across disciplines, across time, the path forward is the same. Face the fear and choose something higher than it. So what do you do with this? You stop waiting for the fear to disappear. You stop bargaining with it. You walk forward with shaky hands and you do it anyway. You remind yourself that faith isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else matters more. Your vision, your future, your soul, and yes, you'll fail, you'll fall, you'll be laughed at, but you'll rise and you'll learn and you'll become someone fear no longer recognizes. Someone dangerous, someone alive. You can be ruled by fear or transformed by faith, but you cannot have both. Choose wisely. We can find e-bite reasons not to try, or we can make just one effort to begin, whether it's applying for a visa, learning a new culture, or chasing a passion online. Progress never comes out in excuses or effort. That's the choice. And let's be very clear. One builds your future, the other protects your present at the cost of your future. It's a brutal trade, and yet it's one we make every single day, often without even realizing it. Because excuses are subtle. They're dressed up in reason, in logic, in compassion. I'm too tired. It's not the right time. I need to figure things out first. These don't sound like excuses. They sound like valid concerns. But that's exactly what makes them dangerous. They sound true. They feel responsible. But they're not rooted in truth. They're rooted in avoidance. Now, there's a difference between rest and avoidance, between wisdom and fear. That distinction matters. But most of the time, if we're honest with ourselves, we're not pausing to reflect. We're stalling to delay. We're using clever words to cover the real issue, and we're afraid of putting in effort because we know that once we start, there are no more excuses. The moment you begin trying, failure becomes real. As long as you're sitting on the sidelines, your potential is protected, untested, intact. But that's not potential. That's delusion. Effort, on the other hand, is costly. Not just physically, but emotionally, philosophically. Because effort demands responsibility. You have to own your choices. You have to say, this is on me now. And that's terrifying, especially in a world where blame is currency, where we're encouraged to identify as victims before we're invited to become agents of our own transformation. Effort strips all that away. It doesn't care how hard your past was. It doesn't ask for permission. It demands action. But here's the psychological kicker. Excuses create short-term relief and long-term suffering. Effort does the opposite. It generates short-term struggle and long-term freedom. And the mind, being wired for survival rather than growth, will often choose relief. That's why change is so difficult. Your nervous system is screaming at you to stay safe, and effort is inherently unsafe. It requires you to stretch into the unknown, to risk looking foolish, to fail publicly. And yet, it's the only path to anything resembling a meaningful life. This isn't just motivational fluff. It's grounded in behavioral science. The more often you choose excuses, the more your brain wires itself to expect and accept less from life. You lower the ceiling of your expectations. You adapt to mediocrity. On the other hand, when you choose effort, even in small, imperfect ways, you create what psychologists call a growth-oriented self-schema. You start to see yourself as someone who acts, someone who can. That's not arrogance, that's earned confidence. We often romanticize effort in hindsight. Once it's succeeded, we admire those who pushed through, who never gave up. But what we ignore is that effort looks like madness in the moment. It looks inefficient. It looks awkward. It's filled with missteps, embarrassment, and discouragement. But you can't skip that part. You don't get the reward without the effort, and you don't get the effort without the humility to look like a beginner. So the question is not whether effort is required. That's a given. The question is whether you're willing to make peace with the fact that your life is going to cost you something. Your pride, your comfort, your illusions. Excuses cost less upfront. That's why they're so tempting. But over time, they cost everything. Your progress, your purpose, your self-respect. The world isn't waiting for you to become perfect. It's waiting for you to become active, to contribute, to try. There will always be people with better tools, more talent, more luck, but those things aren't within your control. Effort is. And effort, sustained over time, builds what talent alone cannot: character. You'll never know what you're capable of until you stop protecting your potential and start testing it. You have two options: make an excuse or make a move. Only one will take you forward. Excuses are seductive lies. Effort is a difficult truth. Only one of them changes your life. In life, we either grow or regret not trying. Even failure teaches more than fear ever will. Choose to grow, even if it's slow, even if it's painful. Your story isn't about perfection, it's about persistence, regret or growth. That's the choice. It's not packaged that way, of course, not at the beginning. At first, it just feels like postponing, like avoiding discomfort, like choosing safety. But if you look at it closely, over time, you'll see the pattern. Every time you shy away from a hard decision, every time you avoid a challenge, every time you choose what's comfortable over what's necessary, you're not preserving peace. You're planting seeds of regret. You're delaying growth, and that delay has a cost. And eventually, you pay that cost in the quiet hours of your life When the noise dies down and there's nothing left to distract you from what you could have been. Growth isn't glamorous. That's part of the problem. We live in a culture that celebrates the results but hides the process. The highlight reel is polished, but the behind the scenes, the doubt, the trial and error, the confusion, that's the part no one posts. So we built this illusion that growth is supposed to be clean and exciting. It's not. It's clumsy. It's painful. And often it feels like failure while it's happening. But that's the paradox. The experience of growing feels almost identical to the experience of falling apart. The difference is direction. Psychologically speaking, regret is one of the most corrosive emotions a person can live with. Not because it's painful, plenty of emotions are painful, but because it's powerless. You can't fix regret. You can't rewrite the past. You can't go back and say yes where you said no. All you can do is sit with the knowledge that you had a chance and you let it die. That's the weight of regret. It lingers, it echoes, it doesn't fade quickly, and it doesn't offer any lessons unless you're willing to face it fully. Growth, on the other hand, is messy, but it's active. It demands participation. You have to decide that becoming better matters more than staying comfortable. You have to engage with the very things you'd rather avoid. Conflict, failure, uncertainty. You have to be willing to stretch yourself into unfamiliar shapes. Intellectually, emotionally, even socially. It's not safe, but it's alive. And unlike regret, growth gives something back. It gives you momentum, wisdom, self-respect. Now, the difficulty is this. Growth doesn't reward you immediately. It usually feels worse before it feels better. And that's why so many people choose regret, because it doesn't hurt as much right now. It lets you escape the tension of a tough decision. It lets you maintain the illusion that someday is a plan. But time doesn't care about your illusion. It keeps moving. And eventually, that escape route you've been taking turns into a wall. And then one day you wake up and realize your fear of growth didn't protect you. It buried you. There's a kind of dignity in choosing growth, a quiet nobility in deciding that your suffering should mean something, that you will not let the hardship be wasted, that if pain is inevitable, it should at least be transformative. This isn't about toxic positivity. This isn't just work harder. This is about voluntarily accepting the burden of becoming who you were meant to be, because the alternative is slowly becoming someone you don't respect. Even failure, within the context of growth, is meaningful. It teaches, it sharpens, it humbles. But failure born from avoidance, that's hollow. It leaves no lessons, only shame. So if you're going to fail, fail in the direction of growth. Fail forward. At least then your losses are building something inside you rather than just piling up behind you. The world is filled with people who waited, who postponed, who said maybe later until there was no later left. Don't become one of them. The pain of growth is temporary. The pain of regret is permanent. And the longer you delay, the more it hardens into identity. So when the next moment comes, and it always comes, where you're faced with the hard road or the easy escape, remember, this, said Alun, regret is the ghost of what you refuse to become. Growth is the proof that you still can. There will be hard days, but when you remember your why, you'll find the strength to keep going. You only ever have two choices: give up or give it everything you've got. Success or survival. That's the final fork in the road. And the mistake most people make is believing they're the dot. Same thing, that surviving the day is a kind of success. But let me tell you, survival isn't baseline. It's the default setting. It's what happens when you do the bare minimum required to not fall apart. Success, on the other hand, is intentional. It requires vision, structure, effort, sacrifice. It demands more from you than you want to give, and it gives more back than you ever imagined if you're willing to pay the price. Now, there's a part of you that knows this. And even if your life isn't where you want it to be right now, you know the difference between getting by and building something. Survival is reactive. You wake up late, answer messages late, eat whatever's available, scroll, repeat. You move through the day, putting out fires, chasing comfort, avoiding decisions. You're not steering anything. You're just holding the wheel while the current pulls you, but success is different. Success is proactive. You don't wait for the right mood. You don't depend on motivation. You build habits. You create systems. You become someone who does the work, especially when you don't feel like it. That's discipline. And discipline is what transforms survival into success. Because here's the truth no one tells you. You will never drift into excellence. You don't accidentally become strong, wise, respected, or financially free. Those outcomes are engineered. And if you're not engineering your future, you're just reacting to the present. And that's not success. That's stagnation with a polite smile. The danger is that survival feels like progress in the short term. It gives you little dopamine hits. You check a box, you avoid a confrontation, you get through the week, you convince yourself you're managing, and you probably are. But what you're not doing is building. You're not moving the needle. You're not laying the foundation for a different kind of life. And over time, the weight of that truth catches up to you. You start to feel restless, empty. You wonder why nothing is changing. But it is changing, just not in the direction you want, because nothing stays still. You're either constructing your future or you're slowly dismantling it through inaction and passivity. Psychologically, humans are pattern makers. We adapt to whatever we repeat. So if you keep choosing survival mode, staying just busy enough to avoid introspection, just comfortable enough to delay action, your brain locks that in as normal. And the longer you live there, the harder it becomes to imagine more. But success demands you rupture that pattern, that you confront the parts of yourself that are addicted to the predictable, even when the predictable is slowly killing your ambition. And look, this isn't about chasing some loud, flashy version of success. Not everyone wants millions or applause or status. That's not the point. Success is personal. Maybe for you, it's about becoming someone your younger self would be proud of. Maybe it's finally taking care of your body, or building that business you keep dreaming about, or being the first person in your family to travel, to speak up, to break the cycle. That kind of success still demands everything. Not money, not connections. You, all of you, your discipline, your pain, your consistency. And yes, the world will hand you excuses to stay small. It will hand you distractions and labels and limitations. But none of that matters if you stop handing those things power. The truth is, every day, you're making the choice, whether you acknowledge it or not. You're either committing to surviving or committing to succeeding. One is the slow erosion of your potential. The other is daily resurrection. So ask yourself, are you living each day to stay afloat? Or are you building something that can carry you and others forward? Survival keeps you alive. Success gives you a life worth living. Choose accordingly.